with numerous different areas. So some of the stuff I have here is actually scans. So like for these bracers, they're actually 3D scans using maybe some of the Mondo stuff, some of my own action figures, some custom parts. Just like that. And I build up the character just so, like this. Now, what I didn't show here is the pose. I worked out the pose with Benjamin Malev this morning because I'm actually using Benjamin's 3D models. Benjamin is doing Mega Custom X out in the other room. And he built this amazing tribute to Emiliano's new designs here. So this is like real art, fan art, okay? Whoa, we're not worthy, we're not worthy. I have no Wi-Fi, so I can't put up any Wayne's World gifs. So the thing about ZBrush, which is a lot of fun, is it's like Photoshop, if anyone uses Photoshop, but you have all your layers and you can just build up your model. So I have it all planned out here, and we put on the hair, which is actually a 3D scan of the Origins hair. I've just manipulated it. If we look at it here. And I can go in and I have, let me see, I just get my move brush. And I can manipulate it there to pull it out because it's stuck in the head in the wrong place. And then bring on the helmet and the axe. So the next part of my process is we got to light this model, texture it, and then get it ready to make an illustration in Photoshop. Okay? I've been developing this process over the last 5 or 6 years, and I actually do this work for companies like Catalyst Games in Seattle. So I do a lot of stuff for Battletech and some other games companies. And how it works that's a lot of fun is they have miniatures for game design for like robots or whatever, STL files. They send me the files, and I use this process to create the artwork that they use in the books and they use in the boxes. And all the promotional materials. And I, in turn, then have developed a way to use it for all my MOTU stuff. So when the figure is ready, we come in here. And this program is called Keyshot. So there's our model. Let me just reopen it from the start. And this was actually a bit of industrial design software that was used for people who were making, they want to make photographic visualizations of materials. Like if you were designing a new contour Coca-Cola bottle and you want to make something that looks like a photographic representation rather than actually having to make the bottle and photograph it, you can use Keyshot. Now, for my students in college, because I teach in game design in university in Ireland, I am moving this workflow to Substance Painter, which is basically 3D Photoshop because Adobe has bought it. So there's our character, Barbaro, Emiliano's character, Barbaro. And I've got already set up with lights, so I have materials and lights on him. And I come from a photography background, so I know my lenses. I can actually change the perspective based on wide angle. So look, I could go like really wide angle lens, fisheye, change the perspective of the character. Look at our model from different angles. I didn't put anything on his ass, sorry. Because I only going to illustrate from the front, okay? So, there's a Barbaro we have, and I have the gold for the arms, for the armor, and the fur. And when he's ready to be rendered, I press render. And then when I have my materials, I have my lights, everything, I also render him in this blue because it gives a glow on the edges. And then I do a translucent color for the skin. Okay? So once that process is done, which I've already rendered, okay, I finished that. I'm going to close ZBrush because it takes up quite a lot of RAM when I'm trying to work into Photoshop. So here's one version, but I made the mistake when I did this one that the boots were still turned on. You should be able to see his toes. And I didn't do the metals. Okay, so this was version 1. So we'll turn this off and save it out. Oh, and this is my next piece I'm working on, which is kind of an idea of Granimir actually creating Eternia and using the famous starburst design from the toy packaging. Okay, so in order to create a composite from this, I have Barbaro here ready in my renders folder. I'm bringing him in. There he is with all the lights and colors. Now there's a couple of little mistakes in the render here where the model is broken, but for me and the way I work, that doesn't matter. I'll airbrush this because it's only going to be a 2D piece. It's not going into any kind of, it's never going to be a 3D print. So I picked this pose this morning with Dan and with Ben just because it has that classic 5.5 action figure He-Man pose. But later on I'm going to go and give it a more Frank Franzetta dynamic battle pose. So there's our basic model. And now we build it up. So here's the version with the underneath. So with the lights on, lights off. And I just change in Photoshop what we call a blend mode. So I can actually just change the opacity of my lights. It's my blue rim because this one helps to create a lot of dramatic depth to the model. You can see a big difference there. And it adds another layer of texture as well. And then we bring in, this might not look much, but when you put this into a blend mode of soft light, now you're getting a real translucent feeling to the skin on the model. And the last one then is, this is heavy light. Set that to soft light. No, actually wrong one, sorry, that goes to light color. Brought dragged right down, and then I use this just to grab some highlights. But what I'm going to do with this is, I'm going to show you in real time how it would look. Is I leave it as it is, and I'm going to warm it up because I always love in the He-Man stuff the real lava style glow of the original Rudy Obrero artwork. That glow that it's a volcanic planet, it's violent, it's disruptive, it's like savage He-Man. I love that. So I want to give this a much more warmth. So we give it a lot of glows there. Go back in here to another filter that I want to use to bring up the shadows a bit more and the clarity. Now it's really pushing it as a lava glow. Okay. And press OK. And set to lighter color. See where just a bit like that. Okay. Maybe that's a bit much, so maybe let's try this way. Yeah, there you go. Now, I'm liking that, okay? So I just got to put this down for a minute. Okay, so I've merged all of these layers in Photoshop into one layer. So now we have our figure character ready to go, and I'm just going to do one more little tweak, which I call, it's a raw. I don't want to give a full-on Photoshop lesson. I just want to show you my process artistically, okay? And what I did is there, if you look at the differences, I punched up all the shadows and color because now I have that exaggerated shadows that you would have remember from seeing the old Rudy Obrero, Frank Franzetta style, because I want it to look like a real 80s piece of artwork, you know, using modern tech. So there's our character ready, but now we want to put some texture and stuff through it, right? So let's create a composition with our character. Now, I'm very lucky living in Ireland. I have a lot of nice coastal landscape. And about 2 years ago, I went up to the coast in Donegal where they shot the Millennium Falcon scenes for episode 8. And I photographed all that landscape. And I use it for creating my rock base. So if we bring over our character here onto the canvas, and we put him right bang in the middle and blow him up. Now, let's give him something to stand on. So I have block-ins. I have all of these libraries of files pre-prepped for me to build things very fast. Because in concept art, you need to work fast. Okay, so I have a landscape here, pre-cut, pre-graded, everything ready to go. And we do not want to put it in the Facebook Messenger, we want to put it in the Photoshop. Go with this one. We drop that there like that on an angle. That piece of landscape can go behind him. And let's drop another piece in front of him. Okay. Now, something I love playing with here is I spent maybe a whole summer and another 3 months, maybe 6 months in total, making my backgrounds. So my backgrounds are actually my own hand-painted acrylics on huge canvas that I photograph. So I also have, this is called Pebeo. It's a type of mixing paint with oil paints with alcohols, and you get this effect, okay? This marbling. And then this is acrylics with palette knives on board. Real cloud, and then it's all blended together in Photoshop to create these type of backgrounds, okay? That have that really smoky, sfumato, Frank Frazetta, classical painted background feel, okay? So what I do with those then is I drop those in. So I have a new one made here that's mine. This is my 22 background. It's a bit more abstract. But I'm going to go with my classic. Drop that in the background, and we start to blend it up. So I like to do what's called a vignette, which is a photographic term where you fade in your edges with a black. So I bring those in, often behind the main character, like that. Blend it out a bit. Okay. Now, if you look at the light source that I've created on the 3D model, there's a lot of lava glows, right? A lot of glow there. So how am I going to get that to look, to blend on the piece of art? I take the teardrop tool in Photoshop and I actually grab that orange, like there. And I'll create a fade on top of the whole piece with that orange. So now it looks like he's in that land and that glow is coming from the ground. It's going to take a lot more layers and airbrushing to get that to look like a lava base, you know? But that's the start. Now I'm just going to need 2 hands for a second. And now I'm going to create a shadow fade on my figure, which I use quite a lot to build up the silhouette. And I just drag up like that to create the shadow underneath him. Blacker feet, more shadow, more silhouette. Because silhouette for these type of pieces, like if you look at Frank Frazetta's Death Dealer, which is the big black figure on the horse, very famous fantasy painting, big silhouette, you know, that kind of stuff. So just 2 secs. Okay, so next, one of my favorite things I like to add to my artwork. I was in a restaurant in Ireland. It was a really terrible 1980s decor restaurant on the beach. And I got very excited, and all my friends think I'm a massive nerd because I walked in and I have this is my particle folder. This is what really brings my artwork to life. Where's my particles? All my lava comes from this lamp. So this was an overhead light in a restaurant with this terrible glitchy glass finish that looks like lava, and I took a bunch of photos with my iPhone and I ended up with this, masked it out in Photoshop. And what's fun is you have this look from photos, Let's drop that in here. Set to screen mode. Linear dodge, that looks nice. Now he looks like he's made of lava, but we're going to change it up a bit. I need 2 hands for this. And then we create a mask. Perfect. And if we fill that black, it's going to disappear. And then I could just pick parts with an airbrush to make it look like lava is starting to trickle through his legs. And this is the kind of blocking in a lot of concept artists would do for game design. And we should bring up the glow above it. Maybe not create another layer of glow, but brighten it quite a lot. I'm going to mask that one out, same way. And I'm going to use a brush made from a picture of a cloud to bring in some of it again. So where's my cloud brush? Cloud brush, where are you? There you go. And atmospherics are very important to bring these things together and how the light interacts with our model. Okay, so our figure is coming together. Our background is coming together. I'm going to start dropping in some extra atmospheric. So for instance, I have this, it's called Lava Spark. I've created a lot of these designs, these particles, by actually putting baby powder on black paper. All right, so it's just baby powder, flicked on black paper, and then you take a photo, and by bringing up all the contrast, so it's very harsh black and white, that can be brought in behind my figure, like this. I set that to a mode that makes all black transparent. And now I'm going to create kind of atmospheric particles in the air. But because of our light, we raster. What we do is I'm rasterizing. It just gives me another options for editing in Photoshop. And we'll go color balance, and we're going to make that very, very orange. So now it's very lava looking. And create the glow that's coming up behind our character. And again, jump in. And I have this one preset kind of sun glow. So it looks like there's actually light reflecting off the back of his body in a really Giroux Struzan, Frank Frazetta 80s feel. Okay. We call it the halo effect. You ever seen a photograph where the light is hitting off the person, it's creating a silhouette, but there's a little white line on the edge. So that's what we're going for here. Okay. The next thing we want to do is add a bit of grit to the ground. So by doing something like this, it actually creates a sense of movement that maybe when he put his foot down, a little bit of dust came up. And I have to use these type of effects quite a lot when I'm doing giant robots, because these effects will give scale. So obviously, this person is human size. He put his foot down, a little burst of dirt came up. When you're doing a giant robot, you've got to make that thing absolutely tiny because that robot's supposed to look like 3 stories tall. Okay, so he's coming together. And again, I haven't changed this much from the last piece I painted, which was Wonder. So he's got that Charles Bronson face, okay, which pretty much fits with that 80s style that Emiliano's got going on over here. So. Okay, so there he is. And this is one of my favorite shapes because when you add that to the head, it works really well on shoulders. Yeah, some more atmospherics. And now we're going to put a fog in front of his feet. Now, I might be making this look like, oh, he's just throwing this together. But this has taken like 10 years of building libraries and building workflows and learning new technology and learning new software to be able to do it really fast. I remember seeing this tiny little drawing because I work as a graphic designer, and when we're teaching graphic design, we're teaching about how do you charge. Because what happens a lot is you do something, and if you do a logo for someone fast, we had this conversation last night, you do a logo for someone fast to go, how come that logo costs me €1,000? You did it in 10 minutes. And what you say back is, it took me 10 years to be able to do it in 10 minutes. You know, that's what college is for, you know. And different countries have different levels of monetary respect for this type of design. Like when I deal with you guys here in Germany and America, people have to pay in America especially to go to learn this in school. You know, you want to be an illustrator in America, you have to pay thousands of dollars in fees. So you have to pay those back, you know. Okay, let's not rant about that. But anyway, here's some more lava particles. Now, if I put one in white, I want to show you another little trick, which so I could bring one of these white ones back, a fog. Here's one of my fogs, done the same way, blurred out, using talc powder. We'll do a fog. Set the screen. But what if I wanted to make this fog a grayskull glow, as I call it, which so for my He-Man stuff, I use the blue glow, and when I'm doing Skeletor, I give him a green glow. So he has the power of Grayskull, it's gone a little bit green, okay? And I looked at the cartoons, Evelyn, I always use purple. And I look at what's the reference in the shows? What will people get as the color for the magic that's coming from that character? So if I wanted to do that, I've actually set up, I have my own preset buttons in Photoshop. And I actually have one called Evil Red Glow, Magic Blue Glow, and I have Grayskull Green. So when I hit Grayskull Green, boom. It's a number of little processes in Photoshop, but the one button lets me just do it instantly, okay? So I can do my Grayskull Green, and that green actually helps this piece pop now. So let's put it just behind him. Off to the side a little bit. And we'll just bring down the opacity because it's just a little bit too much in terms of painting out there. So the next thing I want to do to kind of finish it out is we're going to do two more things. One, I want the piece to have a little bit more depth to the background. So I'm going to go back into my backdrop file, and I have this acrylically painted cloud that I love using. And we can just drop that in like this. And just pop it off the side of the shoulder. Now all of a sudden it's starting to look really Frank Frazetta because it's got that extra layer of texture in the background. Now it's a bit too harsh, so bring it to soft light. Maybe I'm kind of going, maybe the whole thing looks a little too orange and I want to give it another layer of color. So what I tend to do is take two colors to make four colors, and I go adjustment layer, hue saturation. Let's change that up to greens and reds. Okay, and then now we have two more layers of color. Drop in opacity on the mask, and now I can go, well, you know what? I'm going to add in a little bit of red around there and magenta. And we're going to offset that with a gradient of green above it. I just know that this works after years of playing with it. A hint of green. Now we got way more colors in the spectrum going on, okay? Now, it still looks a little 3D rendered, okay, in parts. Now, there's a piece I can show you because I need two hands and an iPad. But what I'm going to show you is how I add layers and blocking of painted texture and skin to my pieces. And my favorite thing for doing skin in my texture folder, and I actually keep my texture folder in ZBrush because it, I can use these same textures to sculpt onto a model and to add texture to the 3D model rather than the 2D model. And one of the best things to use for doing skin is actually concrete because of the porous nature of it. Something I have to teach my students quite a lot when they're doing texture for overlays is the scale of texture, because they'll go, oh, I have this texture I photographed off the back of my hand, and they put it over the whole human body, so all the pores are like this big. Okay, so you have to think about the scale and everything to create that level of realism. So I can take that texture, drop it in, but it's no good just throwing it in there. It needs to go like that, and because maybe that line there can go across the pec. Okay, then we put soft light on. And now all of a sudden, I'm getting another level of depth on my skin, see? And you can see there, now this is something I will have to go at later on with 2 hands on an iPad. We still got a layer of low poly modeling on the arms from ZBrush. You can see it there, some 3D artifacts that are left that need to be airbrushed out and smoothed. So that's another part of the process later. And then we got to paint in the eyes. It's very, very important that you get the eyes right, because that people focus directly in on that. You know, because right now he actually looks like a little bit stoned. He looks like he stayed up drinking with you guys till 3 a.m. So, what do we do next? There's a couple of artifacts there from the render that I did too fast, where I had 2 layers in ZBrush. One was poly painted with the leather, and the other wasn't, and I didn't turn off the unpainted one, so now we have this line. But that can be painted back in. But one of my favorite layers to use is this one. So this is just, this was rust that was dripping off of big iron gate, and where it met the wall, all the rust over years had formed this beautiful texture. And I use that on my Battletech stuff and my armor quite a lot. So if I drop it in, make it really small. Let's see how it looks on the strap. And it gives that kind of almost vintaged, aged look as well. So we can drop one there, just under the shadow. Press soft light. So now look, there you go. Worked very well. There's a little bit of wear and tear, just there. But we can duplicate it, and let's put it in the middle of the helmet too. Let's see how it looks on the gold. There you go, works well. Now it'll require a lot of airbrushing and subtlety later, something I'll need 2 hands for. Okay. So there we go, that's some of it. Now we do need, when I rendered it, I didn't do the gold on the emblem, the dragon or emblem here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my lasso tool and just very roughly go there. New layer. I'm going to pick a goldish yellow off the piece, drop it in, and just press soft light, pin light, and just see what it looks like in different levels. Overlay. Oh, that's kind of gold looking. So and then we just mask it out and airbrush off the sides with a small brush. Just like that. Now, when I started doing this artwork a long time ago, years ago, I would have relied very heavily on extra photographic details. But the more I got into 3D, it's just about texture and digital painting. And the only part that requires a little bit more work on the is the face, and obviously this broken piece on the belt. So let's fix the belt here right now. A lot of this would be done in Procreate later on, but what I'll do is we'll teardrop just that color there. A small hard brush. Just start to fill it in a bit. Just need a darker brush for a sec. Just like that. And I will paint more fur onto that part of the body later. Okay? And I'm just going to add, just to finalize this before it kind of goes to the next level, which I can't really show up here. Why are you doing that to me? Oh, I hate when you do that. There you go. Just a bit more texturing on the skin. And how I do the texturing on the skin now is I have these preps. So this is just black and white emulsion paint, very scratchy paint on canvas board. But what I've done to get it the way I want it is I mask off the sides in Photoshop so it has a transparent faded edge, because that allows me to do this. Very quickly drop this in. And start to get a kind of a hand-painted finish over my skin. So I can put that there. Bring down the opacity a bit. And it's all about subtlety. I've learned over the years. I see my students putting in textures, full 100% overlay. You see more texture than you see shape. It's very much about the subtlety. You were asking me about the Morbid Angel artwork earlier on. That was painted in Photoshop at 1 meter by 1 meter with 200 layers done like this. And the piece of art, just the front cover, was 4.5 gigabytes. It was huge. Because I painted it because it needed to be actually blown up to a giant 20-foot canvas for behind their stage. So I had to paint big. Yeah, the backdrop was 20 foot high, so for the American tour. And as I teach my students, if you're going to paint an album cover, you've got to paint it big because, okay, someone's going to only see it on Spotify, but they're going to need it for a backdrop. They're going to need it for a 12-inch vinyl. So you got to paint big, you know? So I can keep blocking in paints like this. And when I'm finished, I select all my textures and I put them into a folder called a group. I select the shape off my character, and when I select the group, I press this lovely magic button called mask. Anything that was outside of the character has now gone invisible. It's masked off. So my textures only are inside the character. And what I often do as one last touch to my piece before I bring it to back in over for a paint over in Procreate. I was using Painter, now I use Procreate. I create a new layer. I'm going to call it, set it to soft light. I'm going to call it light. And just with black and white, we add extra shadow and highlight with a soft brush. So this is like dodge and burn in photography. And I use the old chiaroscuro techniques that the old masters would use to bring extra light and dimension. So more shadow under the head, so because the head is creating a shadow on the chest. A bit more there. Shadow there where, and there's a shadow being more created there by the axe, okay, let's say there was. Then we change it to white, and we drop in a little bit of and accentuate those really high curved muscle areas. We set it to overlay for a second, we'll see a really drastic finish. And then when it's finished, it's a case of going through the opacity again to see how high, how far up we want to go with the subtlety. And one last thing I do that I want to do to this to make the artwork pop just a little bit more is I go look at my character. And this is how I kind of do it, is I'll make a duplicate, I'll save this. Save on my computer, I'm not going to cloud it, I'll save on the computer. And Barbaro main pose PSD. I'm going to duplicate it. And this is the file that will go to my iPad for painting. There's Barbaro finished, for now. But we're not there yet. I've taken the mask. I've selected the edge of Barbaro, and I'm going to go flatten image. So this copy is now all merged, and I copy and paste just the figure and the background. And then with the background, I bring down the saturation of those colors ever so slightly, so he pops out now from the background just that bit more. Okay, and I'm sure you'll see. Do you know what, we'll do it in we'll do it in a separate layer so you can see the difference. Hue saturation, just down a little bit. So now Barbaro is popping off that background just a little bit. Okay, and another thing to bring him out even more. Copy that layer, is using a bit more sfumato and the idea of depth of field from photography. Now, a lot of people who are new to Photoshop think, oh, I'm just going to go in here and I'm going to go blur, Gaussian blur, and I'm going to make my background blurry, like that. That's a photographic blur. Doesn't look right in the painting. I use filter, noise, median. Not dust and scratches, sorry. Filter, noise, medium, set between 3 and 6. And you can see from the here, it's creating that almost oil-painted blur. Very soft. It's very high now, so let's go to 6. It's a very subtle finish. If you look at all the clouds in the background and the texture, it helps to bring the texture on the actual figure up a lot more here. See? And now I'm done. Thank you. And that's how I cheat. Sorted.